All right, let's talk about startup ideas. If you've ever tried to come up with one, you've probably been told to, just brainstorm. But what if that's the worst possible advice you could get? Today, we're going to dig into a classic essay from Paul Graham that argues the best way to find a great idea is to actually stop looking for one. So here it is, the million-dollar question, right? You want to build something new, maybe something revolutionary. But where in the world does that billion-dollar idea come from? Do you just lock yourself in a room with a whiteboard and wait for lightning to strike?
Well, according to Graham, the answer is a simple and kind of shocking no. The best way to get startup ideas is to stop trying to think of startup ideas. I know it sounds completely backward, but stick with me on this. This one little shift in thinking is the key to unlocking the whole thing. See, the problem is that when you actively think up ideas, you often walk straight into what we can call the idea generation trap. The right way to go about it isn't to invent ideas, but to notice them. It's about looking for problems, and here's the important part, problems you have yourself. And this is why that trap is so dangerous. When you try to just invent an idea out of thin air, you're not connected to reality. You start dreaming up problems for people who don't exist. And this leads to the single biggest reason startups fail, building a perfect solution for a problem nobody actually has.
So what does one of these fake problem ideas actually look like? Well, Paul Graham has a perfect name for them, the sitcom idea. It's the kind of idea that a TV writer would make up for a character who's, starting a company on a show.
And that's really its defining feature. A sitcom idea sounds plausible. It doesn't sound obviously terrible, which is exactly what makes it so seductive. It's just good enough to fool you, the founder, into pouring months or even years of your life into it.
Here's the classic example he gives, a social network for pet owners. I mean, it sounds kind of plausible, doesn't it? People absolutely love their pets, they spend a ton of money on them, so of course they'd want a special social network. The logic seems to check out. And here's the real trap. When you pitch this sitcom idea to your friends, they're not going to tell you it's a terrible idea. Instead, you get this polite, kind of wishy-washy feedback. Yeah, I could see people using that. Nobody gives you the hard, honest no that could save you years of wasted effort.
And this is the brutal math of sitcom ideas. 1 million people saying, yeah, maybe I'd use that, adds up to exactly 0 active, passionate users. Mild interest doesn't get people to sign up, and it sure doesn't get them to pull out their wallets.
Okay, so if sitcom ideas are the poison, what's the antidote? It's what we can call the organic idea. This is an idea that isn't invented, it's discovered. It grows naturally out of a real, genuine need.
You'll find that the best organic ideas tend to share 3 common traits. First, the founders really want the product for themselves. Second, they have the skills to actually build it. And third, and this is a big one, very few other people see the value in it. At least, not yet. If you look at the origin stories of Microsoft, Apple, or Facebook, you see this exact pattern every time.
This is the ultimate cheat code of solving your own problem. It comes with a built-in reality check. You're not guessing if the problem is real. You know it's real because you are living it. This brings us to a brilliant metaphor that helps you visualize the shape of a good market, the difference between a deep well and a shallow puddle.
Okay, let's break this down. On the left, you've got the puddle. That's our sitcom idea. It appeals to a huge number of people, but just a tiny bit. It's broad and shallow. On the right, you've got the well. It's for a much smaller, really specific group of people, but they want it desperately. It's narrow and deep.
The puddle is all about a lack of urgency. Nobody is losing sleep at night because they don't have a social network for their dog. It's a nice to have. And let me tell you, nice to haves do not build great companies.
Now compare that with the well. When Microsoft built a programming language for that tiny group of Altair computer hobbyists, those users needed it. Before that, they were programming in raw machine code. When Facebook launched just for Harvard students, they wanted it so badly that they just flocked to it. Your initial product can be buggy and basic, but if the need is deep enough, people will use it.
This right here is the ultimate litmus test for your idea. Ask yourself this exact question. If you can't name a specific group of people who have this burning, desperate need, your idea is probably a puddle, not a well.
But finding a deep well is only part 1 of the puzzle. A great idea can't just be a deep well. It also needs a way to grow beyond that initial tiny group of users.
The key is that your starting niche can't be a dead end.
There has to be some kind of clear, logical path for your product to grow from that small group into much bigger related markets.
Facebook's path out is just a perfect example of this. They started with that deep, narrow well of Harvard students. From there, expanding to other colleges, a very similar group, was the easy next step. Once they dominated that space, opening the doors to the rest of the world was just the natural next move.
Microsoft had a very similar path. They started with one programming language for one obscure computer. Then they ported that language to other machines. Then they built other languages, then operating systems, then applications. Each step just logically followed the last one, taking them from a tiny niche to, well, global domination.
So, if you can't always predict this path out, how do you know if your idea has that kind of potential? The final piece of advice isn't some formula. It's more of a mindset. It's about trusting your instincts.
And this really gets to the core of it. The best ideas aren't thought up in a boardroom. They're noticed by people who are already living in the future. If you're on the cutting edge of a field, maybe you're a developer using a new coding language, or a scientist using a new lab technique, the unique problems you face today are very likely the problems everyone else is going to face tomorrow.
So, this is the final takeaway, the real question you should be asking yourself. Stop asking, what's a good startup idea? And start asking, what field am I on the leading edge of? The unique problems you run into there aren't just annoyances, they're clues. They are the seeds of the next great startup idea.